November 14th, 2025. At precisely 0545 hours, a freezing mist conceals the haunted canopy of the Serebryansky Forest. Deep in the Donbas, the muddy roads leading into the strategic railway hub of Lyman remain heavily scarred from years of relentless conflict. Known to military strategists as the gates of the Donbas, this devastated city is about to become the epicenter of a massive new offensive. Far beneath the shattered surface, Ukrainian commanders operating in secret subterranean bunkers analyze real-time tactical data to anticipate the enemy's next move. The glowing screens reveal a chilling reality as massive armored columns begin massing on the horizon under the cover of the dense morning fog. Radio operators relay urgent coordinates through encrypted channels, their faces bathed in the harsh blue light of military monitors as the tension peaks. Along the frozen front line, heavily armed infantrymen in reinforced trenches conduct their final equipment checks before the inevitable storm breaks over their positions. The sharp, metallic clicks of ammunition magazines locking into place echo down the damp corridors of the trench network in the freezing air. Plumes of breath rise from the soldiers as squad commanders silently move down the line, ensuring every man is prepared for the coming assault. Hidden deep within a heavily camouflaged forested tree line, Ukrainian artillery crews stand by in absolute silence, waiting for the crucial command to strike. Heavy netting is rapidly pulled away to reveal the cold steel of a massive 155mm howitzer aimed at the eastern horizon. On a makeshift wooden helipad, the high-pitched whine of a reconnaissance drone cuts through the morning quiet as its rotors spin up to speed. The small aircraft launches vertically into the heavy gray sky, quickly disappearing into the low-hanging cloud cover to become the unseen eye above. From thousands of feet in the air, the drone's advanced cameras reveal a sprawling, terrifying network of zigzagging trenches and freshly cratered fields. Switching to thermal imaging, the operators detect the glowing white heat signatures of Russian armored vehicles slowly creeping along the dark forest edge. In a dark, concrete basement miles away, a drone pilot stares intently at his flickering monitor, tracking the creeping advance with absolute precision. Through the thick morning fog, the distant, hulking silhouettes of heavy armor become barely visible, kicking up massive clouds of dust and exhaust. Urgent orders crackle over the radios as Ukrainian artillery crews sprint through the deep mud to man their positions against the impending mechanized assault. A heavy artillery shell is forcefully rammed into the breech of the cannon, the intricate mechanics locking into place with a definitive, heavy thud. The battery commander raises his arm and drops it aggressively, signaling the crew to unleash their devastating payload across the contested gray zone. A massive burst of pressurized smoke and orange flame erupts from the barrel, sending a violent concussive shockwave rippling through the surrounding pine trees. Miles away, the distant tree line erupts into towering plumes of dark earth and black smoke as the precision artillery shells find their marks. The sheer scale of the bombardment becomes apparent as massive clouds of debris settle over the shattered landscape, temporarily halting the enemy advance. High above the battlefield, surveillance drones track the perfectly spaced explosions rolling across the frozen mud, successfully disrupting the enemy's armored formations. Ukrainian infantrymen huddle tightly against the reinforced dirt walls of their trenches as the ground shakes violently from the sheer force of nearby concussions. Covered in soot and sweat, the defenders maintain an intense focus, listening to the deafening roar of artillery echoing across the contested valley. Reinforcements sprint hunched over through the zigzagging trench network, kicking up wet mud as they rush to secure the vulnerable forward defensive positions. A machine gunner peers intensely through the narrow firing slit of a sandbagged bunker, aiming into the thick, choking smoke hanging over the battlefield. As the dense artillery smoke begins to clear from the gray zone, the jagged remains of a completely destroyed forest are starkly revealed. Seizing the momentary break in the enemy advance, a Ukrainian Bradley fighting vehicle roars out from its concealed position in the tree line. The heavy armored tracks violently crush through the frozen puddles, churning up deep clods of dark earth as the vehicle aggressively pushes forward. The Bradley's turret rapidly rotates toward the smoking tree line, its heavy chain gun tracking an unseen target through the hazy afternoon air. Brilliant yellow tracer rounds slice through the dusty atmosphere as the armored vehicle unleashes a torrent of suppressive fire onto a ruined concrete structure. From a drone's perspective, the glowing tracer rounds impact the fortified tree line, kicking up spectacular sparks and splintered wood in a devastating display. Under the protective cover of the smoking steel hull, a squad of infantry dismounts from the vehicle and rapidly spreads out across the battlefield. The soldiers maneuver carefully through a graveyard of shattered trees as volumetric sunbeams struggle to pierce the heavy smoke lingering above the combat zone. The squad leader issues rapid hand signals, flawlessly directing his men to flank a ruined concrete structure surrounded by deep, freshly formed blast craters. An intense firefight erupts as soldiers return fire from behind mounds of overturned earth, their muzzle flashes illuminating the dark, overcast afternoon sky. Hot brass casings eject rapidly from the assault rifles, tumbling gracefully through the chaotic air before landing silently in the thick, soft mud. A soldier sprints across a brief open gap between destroyed brick walls, sliding into cover just as enemy fire kicks up dust behind him. Above the chaos, an FPV drone flies low and incredibly fast through the skeletal remains of a heavily bombed industrial factory on the outskirts. Weaving aggressively through shattered windows and collapsed roofing, the drone captures the chaotic, apocalyptic ruin of the heavily contested industrial sector. Inside the dimly lit drone command post, a young operator grips his remote controller with absolute concentration as static flickers across his tactical goggles. Deep behind enemy lines, a massive secondary explosion erupts, sending a towering fireball high into the air to illuminate the dark storm clouds. The soaring pillar of black smoke rising from the destroyed logistics hub contrasts sharply with the bleak and desolate gray winter landscape below. As the brutal day concludes, the setting sun casts long, dramatic, blood-orange shadows across the deeply cratered fields and ruined forest tree lines. A destroyed, rusted tank sits silently in a muddy field, its haunting silhouette framed against the vibrant, bruised purple colors of the twilight sky. Weary soldiers in the trench adjust their gear as darkness falls, attaching advanced night vision optics and thermal scopes in the fading evening light. The distinct metallic click of a night vision mount locking into a tactical helmet signals the immediate transition from day combat to night operations. The sprawling trench line plunges into deep darkness, illuminated only by the faint, eerie glow of distant smoldering fires burning across the horizon. Through the green phosphor lens of night vision goggles, the desolate landscape of shattered trees and deep craters transforms into a ghostly, starless wasteland. Under the cover of total darkness, a squad of elite special forces operators moves completely silently through the ruins of an abandoned urban street. Heavily geared soldiers stack up tightly outside a breached concrete wall, their movements illuminated only by the stark contrast of infrared tactical lights. An operator's gloved hand grips a suppressed rifle as an infrared laser sight cuts a sharp, invisible beam through the dusty night air. High above, a thermal imaging drone looks straight down at the ruined building, tracking the white-hot figures as they carefully maneuver inside the collapse. The thermal surveillance feed captures the sudden, brilliant white bloom of a distant artillery impact, violently lighting up the cold, dark landscape below. The pitch-black night sky over Lyman is repeatedly torn open by rapid flashes of distant artillery fire that briefly illuminate the low-hanging clouds. A mobile rocket artillery system launches a devastating barrage into the night, its massive tails of fire casting a harsh orange light over the forest. Dozens of glowing rocket trails arc gracefully over the battlefield, tracing deadly paths through the atmosphere before disappearing into the completely dark horizon. An FPV drone flies rapidly through the dark, guided solely by thermal imaging as it races toward a hidden enemy vehicle in the trees. At 3 in the morning, the subterranean command center remains thick with tension as officers analyze glowing digital maps to monitor the night raids. Glowing red icons representing enemy forces are slowly surrounded by blue tactical markers on the screen, indicating a highly successful midnight counter-offensive operation. Dawn breaks over a completely transformed battlefield as a light dusting of pure white snow begins to cover the mud, craters, and destroyed vehicles. A soldier's heavy winter boots crunch softly through the fresh layer of morning snow as he patrols the duckboards of his reinforced trench line. Wrapped in thick winter camouflage, a Ukrainian defender stares blankly over the trench parapet, his breath forming thick white clouds in the freezing air. Tiny snowflakes slowly accumulate on the cold, dark metal of a frosted rifle barrel resting perfectly still atop a frozen, snow-covered sandbag. A drone glides low over the completely frozen surface of the Zherebets River, the thick, gray ice heavily scarred by recent mortar impact craters. The Serebryansky Forest is now gripped by deep winter, its shattered tree trunks coated in a haunting layer of white frost, like an alien world. A heavily armored tracked vehicle slowly carves a new path through the deep snow, its roaring engine throwing up massive plumes of white powder. Parked atop a snowy ridge, a mobile air defense unit scans the heavily overcast winter skies, its radar dish spinning rapidly to detect threats. A soldier grips the handles of a heavy machine gun mounted on a truck bed, constantly scanning the gray clouds for incoming enemy drones. From high altitude, the massive snow-covered battlefield is revealed in its entirety, crisscrossed with thousands of fresh vehicle tracks stretching for endless miles. An artillery crew, operating in freezing conditions, struggles to load a heavily frosted shell into their howitzer while wearing thick, insulated white winter parkas. The immense blast of the howitzer firing instantly melts the snow around the weapon, sending a massive shockwave of steam and dust into the air. Empty brass artillery casings fall from the breach and hit the snow-covered ground, instantly melting a perfect ring of ice around their hot metal. A reconnaissance drone flies low over the ruins of Lyman City, showing collapsed roofs burdened with snow and abandoned streets, completely silent in winter. In the center of a paved road, a massive crater filled with frozen water is surrounded by the twisted metal remains of a destroyed convoy. Positioned perfectly still in a ruined apartment building, a camouflaged sniper covered in white netting waits patiently as his scope reflects the pale light. Intense focus is visible in the sniper's eye beneath his heavy layer of winter face paint, constantly scanning the horizon for any sudden movements. Through the high magnification scope, the snowy field reveals a distant, heavily fortified enemy trench line entirely locked in the bitter, freezing winter stalemate. Hovering high above a friendly trench, a massive resupply drone gently lowers a crucial crate of ammunition on a tether to the waiting soldiers. The defenders quickly grab the swinging supply crate, expertly unhooking it before giving a grateful thumbs up to the hovering robotic lifeline stationed above them. The drone view pulls back rapidly, flying backward over the snowy plains to reveal the sheer length and complexity of the deeply fortified defensive front. A field medic runs crouched through the snowy trench carrying a heavy medical bag, fighting his way through the violently swirling, freezing winter wind. On a rural highway, the rusted awning of a destroyed gas station groans in the wind as massive snow drifts accumulate against the abandoned pumps. A graveyard of destroyed civilian and military vehicles pushed to the side of the highway is slowly being buried completely by the relentless falling snow. Inside a dimly lit basement bunker, a wood-burning stove casts a warm, flickering orange glow on the exhausted faces of completely drained frontline soldiers. Shivering slightly in the freezing war zone, a soldier holds a tin cup of steaming tea close to his face to find a brief moment of warmth. Looking out from the dark bunker slit into the blindingly bright gray zone, the soldiers watch as the wind whips up a massive whiteout blizzard. The heavy snowfall from the blizzard obscures the craters and trenches, creating a temporary deceptive visual piece over the highly lethal, contested battleground. Suddenly bursting out of the snowstorm, a Ukrainian tank aggressively pushes forward, its stabilized barrel aimed squarely at the hidden enemy defensive lines. Standing half out of the turret hatch, the tank commander surveys the tactical landscape as thick snow accumulates heavily on his helmet and goggles. The massive steel treads of the advancing tank aggressively crush through the deep snowdrifts and frozen mud, leading the charge across the white expanse. Firing its main gun, the tank unleashes a spectacular cone of fire that momentarily illuminates the blinding whiteout conditions of the intense winter blizzard. The massive shockwave of the tank blast ripples across the snowy field, instantly dispersing the falling snow in a perfect circle, visible from above. An accompanying infantryman runs closely behind the armored bulk of the tank, utilizing the heavy steel machine as crucial mobile cover against incoming fire. Fanning out from behind the tank, the infantry squad slides gracefully into a shallow, snow-filled crater to quickly establish a strong forward-firing position. An incoming artillery barrage strikes the snow-covered field ahead of the infantry, violently hurling massive chunks of black earth high into the freezing air. A soldier presses his face deeply into the snow at the bottom of a crater as a terrifying shower of dirt and ice rains down. Aiming a shoulder-launched anti-tank weapon, an infantryman tracks a distant, unseen armored target through his advanced digital optic amid the swirling winter snow. The rocket fires from the launcher with a sharp whoosh, leaving a thick, corkscrewing trail of gray smoke across the pristine white battlefield landscape. The rocket's smoke trail completely disappears into a distant tree line, instantly followed by the brilliant, devastating flash of a massive, high-explosive detonation. A drone, looking down at the resulting blast, reveals a dark, star-shaped scar of scorched earth, suddenly appearing in the otherwise pure white snow. Wearing white camouflage suits, the Ukrainian squad aggressively moves forward out of the crater, seamlessly blending into the snowy environment as they advance. Multiple tanks and infantry squads spread out across the frozen plain, moving cohesively as a massive winter assault unfolds under the heavy gray sky. Heavily armed soldiers navigate a dense, snow-covered pine forest, weaving carefully between the thick, dark trunks as they push deeper into contested territory. A soldier's boot steps heavily onto a completely frozen dead branch, the sharp crack echoing incredibly loudly in the quiet, tension-filled winter woods. Freezing in place at the sound, the squad instantly raises their rifles, aggressively scanning the dark gaps between the trees for any sign of movement. Framed by his white balaclava, the squad leader's intense eyes strain to listen for the enemy over the haunting sound of the freezing wind. Deep inside the forest, the shadows grow thick, and the frozen terrain transforms into a highly dangerous, chaotic maze of heavily splintered fallen timber. High above the forest canopy, a drone orbits slowly, revealing the tiny, dark figures of the squad, cautiously maneuvering through the endless winter woods. The soldiers suddenly break into a full sprint, diving behind massive tree trunks as suppressed enemy fire begins to chip away at the bark. Returning rapid fire from behind a tree, a soldier's muzzle flash violently illuminates the falling snow in a series of rapid, blinding strobe-like bursts. The forest firefight devolves into a chaotic scene of flying wood splinters, kicked-up snow, and highly intense tactical movement in the dappled winter light. Flying aggressively through the forest at eye level, a drone dodges trees to capture the visceral high-speed flow of the deadly close-quarters infantry engagement. A soldier pulls the pin on a smoke grenade and tosses it forward, releasing a thick, rapidly expanding wall of dense white tactical smoke. Using the smoke screen to bound forward, the soldiers' ghostly silhouettes disappear and reappear seamlessly through the swirling artificial fog, masking their tactical advance. From the edge of the forest, the entire tree line becomes completely obscured as artificial smoke mixes heavily with the natural, dense winter fog. A green light flashes on a soldier's chest radio as distorted, urgent voices crackle through the speaker, expertly coordinating the squad's next crucial movement. Soaring high out of the forest, an aerial view captures the sprawling, interconnected scale of the massive defensive line stretching for miles around Lyman. The setting winter sun casts long, stark shadows across the city ruins, turning the snowy landscape into a breathtaking sea of deep blues and purples. Inside the high-tech command center, the atmosphere calms noticeably as officers review the day's highly successful defensive operations on their brightly glowing tactical tablets. A commander makes a decisive mark on a physical map with a red grease pencil, firmly solidifying the newly stabilized front line on the strategic board. Outside the bunker, a massive radar dish rotates slowly against a stunning night sky filled with newly visible, incredibly bright and sharp winter stars. An advanced thermal imaging scope, mounted on a drone, conducts a final, highly precise, nighttime surveillance sweep over the quiet, deeply frozen riverbed below. The front line remains entirely peaceful at night, except for a solitary flare floating gracefully down from the sky, casting an eerie green glow everywhere. Slowly descending toward a heavily fortified Ukrainian trench complex, the drone watches soldiers rotating their shifts under the pale, cold light of the moon. A fresh squad of soldiers walks into the trench, their faces weary but fully determined to relieve the exhausted men who fought through the day. Taking off his helmet and rubbing his dirt-streaked face, a younger soldier exhales a long, highly visible breath of pure relief into the freezing air. The relieved soldiers walk slowly back toward the rear lines, their exhausted silhouettes fading quietly into the deep shadows of the long trench network. Dawn breaks on a completely new day, turning the sky a brilliant, hopeful shade of pale pink and gold over the devastated but silent battlefield. A completely untouched, pristine stretch of snow contrasts sharply with the distant, heavily smoking ruins left behind by the previous day's intense mechanized combat. Flying low over the abandoned husks of destroyed Russian armor, a drone reveals the wreckage, now entirely buried under a thick blanket of fresh snow. A Ukrainian engineer casually walks through a newly secured sector, using a long metal probe to carefully check the frozen mud for hidden, unexploded ordnance. Piercing the snowy ground with his metal probe, the engineer continues his meticulous, highly dangerous work, long after the massive guns have fallen silent. The morning sun reflects brightly off the ice and puddles that have settled deep into the asphalt of an empty, heavily cratered highway entering Lyman. Outside a reinforced defensive bunker, a team of soldiers sits on wooden crates, eating their combat rations and sharing a quiet moment of genuine camaraderie. Staring thoughtfully out over the vast frozen plains of the Donbas, a soldier's eyes deeply reflect the immense weight and scale of this historical conflict. The skeletal, heavily damaged architecture of Lyman's Central Railway Station stands defiantly proud against the bright, flawlessly clear winter sky above the city ruins. And then, ascending slowly up the side of a tall, concrete communication tower in the center of the city, the camera reveals heavy scars from shrapnel impacts. At the very top of the heavily damaged tower, a large, slightly torn yellow and blue Ukrainian flag is tied securely to the metal grating. Illuminated perfectly by the bright morning sun, the tattered Ukrainian flag snaps aggressively in the strong, freezing winds blowing across the newly liberated territory. Pulling back from the flag, an aerial view reveals the entire sprawling, heavily damaged city of Lyman, now completely secured and quiet under the sun. High over the Serebryansky Forest, a drone shows the massive scars of relentless artillery fire, running through the ancient trees like deep, dark, tragic veins. Emphasizing the natural barriers of the region, the frozen Zherebets River stands as an impenetrable fortress, carved out by the brutal evolution of modern warfare. A memorial cross made of splintered wood and discarded helmets is placed respectfully at the edge of a trench to honor those who held the line. Slightly dusted with fresh snow, a rusted infantry helmet rests on the wooden cross, standing as a quiet testament to the heavy cost of victory. The sun fully rises over the entire Lyman sector, bathing the deeply scarred but completely unbroken landscape in a heroic, golden, and truly majestic light. Standing proudly on a snow-covered ridge, a Ukrainian soldier looks out toward the eastern horizon, with a resolute, unwavering posture forged in the fires of battle. Under a cold, clear winter sky, the tattered flag snaps in the freezing wind over the ruined city, proving that the gates of the Donbas remain closed.